We've been going through kind of a series. Started out with relationship with parents, relationships with friends. Tonight is relationship with the world. Why are we doing this? I mean, it's not kind of the usual fare in terms of confirmation instruction, but I think probably in the past we've been a tad too narrow. And one of the purposes of confirmation, once again, is to relate our faith to life. Those of us who are a little bit older, we sat in classes, we had a book, you go through it, Luther's Catechism, you memorize things, you get tests, you fill in the blanks, and it was that type of thing. And it was good in the sense of doctrine, what is it we believe? But again, that relating it to life, when that doesn't happen, we sit here and we kind of think that our Christian faith is something that is associated with a building or a place or maybe a specific group of people. And we don't make the translation into the rest of life, the rest of the world, and certainly relationships are a big part of that. Foundationally, there's nothing that really surpasses our relationships with parents. And as to spending our life, the majority of our life will be spent not necessarily with family. Well, if we get married and have a spouse, children, etc., but with friends, acquaintances, people that we work with, we go to school with, that vast array of people. Good evening. From what we know in terms of history, human beings seem to have one characteristic that is unique in many ways, and that characteristic is curiosity. We are people who desire to figure things out. We are attracted to new and different things. There's an excitement that comes from exploring. We notice the unusual and we appreciate diversity for the most part. However, it seems that some people seem to be more curious than others. Now, for whatever reason, when we look at the vast population of the world and throughout history, we know that for, again, whatever reason, maybe it's they don't have the money, maybe there's a certain apprehension or fear, but there's many people who never really venture very far from their hometown. We can even look at Jesus and look at the Palestine, etc. He really never went more than 90 miles beyond his hometown. And then there are other people. We think of people who maybe come to mind as far as explorers, whether it's they went across vast distances of land. We look at anthropology, archaeology, et cetera, in terms of how did people come to the Americas, and when did they come? And it's really kind of up to debate. I mean, of course, we were taught in school, well, okay, you've got 1492, Christopher Columbus coming to kind of the Caribbean, etc. But from what we know, a lot of people preceded Columbus by thousands of years. Those that we call Native Americans, whether they came across the Bering Strait, whether they came in another way, came and populated the Americas. There's evidence of other groups of people, whether it was the Chinese, whether it was those people, Norsemen or Vikings, possibilities of people from Africa, all kinds of things. Vast distances that they traveled by land, but then also by sea. And certainly when we look in terms of our age, exploring space, exploring the universe, that curiosity that propels people to go somewhere else, again, is pretty constant. What is it, though, that prohibits other people from not venturing very far out? We might say maybe there's a certain fear that exists, a certain apprehension. Maybe, again, people are driven by the search or the need for food. Maybe they're forced out by others. Some seek valuable resources, or maybe they just want to know what's beyond the horizon. When we talk about our journeys in this life, we benefit from the exploration of others. We think somebody went and then they came back. And they said to somebody, this is what I found. A few weeks ago, in terms of the Gospels, we had Philip going to Nathanael, and he had encountered Jesus, and he believed Jesus was the one to fulfill the expectations as far as the Jews were concerned in terms of a Messiah who would come and save them. And he goes to Nathanael, and the words that he expresses, "Come and see." Those are very tantalizing words. Come and see. Come and experience what it is I have experienced, and experience for yourself. When we talk about all that there is to explore, maybe we kind of think in terms of the beginning, as far as Genesis is concerned. Now, some people believe the account in Genesis as far as the creation of the world, they believe it in a literal sense. Other people, we understand the theology of it. Remember, Genesis is not a science book. It's a theology book. That doesn't mean that it is in opposition to science. Doesn't mean that science can't substantiate certain things. Surprisingly, once again, Genesis talks about when God creates light, he just simply says, "Let there be light," and there's light. And physicists today say that the presence of light in the universe happened just that fast. They can't explain it all, but according to their calculations, etc., that's what's happening. We know the universe is expanding. So it's continuing in and of itself to go into new areas. We discover all these things, and when we look at Genesis, there's there's certain truths that are spoken about. And those are truths that we kind of hold on to in terms of being the people of God and our understanding of the world, or our understanding of the universe. First of all, the earth is a part of a larger cosmos. It's estimated that the beginning of things was probably 13.5 billion years ago. With the Hubble telescope, or the James Webb telescope, and James Webb is phenomenal in the sense that it's allowing us to see things that we have never seen before. Galaxies, the light from them, very close to the formation of the universe. Right now we're back about 800 to 500,000 years after the universe was created. And once again, it takes light that long to get to us. So the light we're seeing now is the light that was given off those billions of years ago. Big universe. They say that if you take your thumb and put it against the night sky, that behind your thumb would be about 2,500 galaxies. 2,500 galaxies. Difficult for us to comprehend. But again, reinforces that we're a part of something much bigger. Genesis also emphasizes that there is order, that there are the laws of nature. And those laws, again, help bring about a certain expectation as to how things happen. Just the presence of gravity in the universe is astounding. There's diversity. You don't have to go very far to see how diverse the world is. There's an interconnectedness, a reliance of, again, maybe the animal kingdom upon plants, human beings, once again. We can't do it by ourselves. The responsibility to manage, to care and to be types of people that are responsible for the world and take care of it and its creatures, etc. Human beings, again, are special, but we are the only species also that have a tendency to mess things up. Evidence of that during the recent pandemic. Things were closed down, and the national parks were closed down, and they would talk about the fact that animals, people who were park rangers, etc., they saw certain animals in areas of the park that most often are, crisscrossed by tourists, etc. But they saw certain animals come into areas of the park where they had not seen that animal for 100 years. It's like once you take human beings out of the equation, the world responds. I don't know if you've seen any of these shows sometimes where they take and maybe documentaries, and even places like, in Russia where they had nuclear reactor and disaster, etc., Chernobyl, and the areas around it in terms of radiation, etc. And towns were just abandoned. I mean, you can go to those towns today and you will, you go into houses and there's plates on the table as though people just got up from eating and left. Children's toys, bicycles, etc. It's kind of almost eerie, but people had to leave quickly and they just left everything. But to see how vegetation is taken over, even places where you have, concrete, parking lots, etc., the world kind of goes back to what it was before we showed up. So, and that's exciting in many ways, but it also, I think, reinforces for us, our need to be responsible and to manage things and not think, well, okay. In Genesis, God says to human beings, go out and have dominion. And many people have interpreted that as go out and dominate rather than go out and be responsible. Maybe one of the greatest examples of that has probably been, Europeans and our treatment of Native Americans. We came in and we wanted what they had. They had land. As time went on, we discovered their land had resources. And so we pushed them out, put them in confined spaces because we wanted the value of what they had. Welcome. How was traffic? Absolutely horrible. So, again, the excitement about the world and what it contains. To reinforce, it's a big world. If you've had the opportunity to travel at all, you've discovered that. I've had that opportunity, and when I go on vacations or travel, a lot of times I like to drive just because I love to drive. But my goodness, I don't know how many times I've been across, the Dakotas. There is nothing there. Or to go from El Paso, Texas to Houston, it's like 700 and some miles. That's just one state. There's a beauty in maybe the sparseness of things. If we allow ourselves to enjoy what those places have to offer. Shortly before I was in seminary in Columbus, Ohio, there was a guy, what shall we say? He was kind of an unusual student. He was unique. He was kind of his own person. And when it came time for him to be assigned to a place, he got assigned, I believe it was to North Dakota. And he thought because of his unique personality that the church had banished him. And he wrote a book, I think it was Journey to a Far Country or whatever, but he talks about, the landscape, et cetera. You go by an expressway and you see the sparseness of it, and you think, oh my gosh, who in the world would want to live here? But he talks about the things that he discovered and just the magnificence of that part of the world. And that's true of so many places. The world can be a tough place, but the world is also incredibly beautiful. There are just sights that you just don't have the words to describe it. Diversity. Sometimes that scares us. People who live in cities, etc. We've always been kind of a tribal people. We like to hang out with people who are like us. We're not so sure about people who are different than us. And of course, the things that are visible in terms of differentness or readily apparent, certainly the color of people's skin, their language, their culture, their ways of doing things. We know that people are very, very different. And yet if we give ourselves a chance to kind of relax a little bit and to learn, as involved in Native American ministries for 30 years, and I would take groups either down to Oklahoma or to Cherokee, North Carolina. And we would go down there on mission trips to help out in some ways, but we would worship with them. We'd share meals. We get into different types of experiences. And one of the things that I would kind of coach people on is I would say, when we're together, try shutting up. You don't need to talk all the time, because a lot of times what we do is in our talking, maybe we feel uncomfortable, and it's almost like we're trying to impose our culture on them. Or they have a food pantry that is probably better than 99.5% of the food pantries in Lutheran Church. And they run it out of a 2-car garage. They serve a couple thousand people a month. And it is just stacked with stuff, and people can come in and shop, etc. Well, we go down, and we help restock the shelves and all those types of things. And, what is our tendency as a human being? We kind of go, oh, well, you're doing it this way. Have you ever thought about doing it another way? Well, that's not real helpful with Native American communities, because what they're used to is, again, colonialization, other people coming in and telling them how to live as though they're stupid. And they aren't. Their cultures predate many of ours by hundreds or thousands of years. They know how to do things. And so it's one of those things sometimes we have to kind of sit back and receive and pay attention and learn from other people. And in that, there can be exchanges that are valuable and meaningful and, incredibly enjoyable. I think one of the challenges we have, and we certainly have that within the Lutheran Church, when the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America started over 25 years ago, one of the things, a goal that we had was that within, I think it was 10 or 20 years, that we would have a membership that would be 10%, people of color. We're not there. I don't know if we'll ever make it there. Somebody once said that the most segregated time in America is Sunday morning. That you don't see many mixed congregations. Why? Our culture, our communities are mixed. But what is it about us? And it's just, again, kind of an analysis, is that certainly we come out of a Scandinavian German background. And that's been kind of our identity. And we try to reach out, and certainly there are efforts, et cetera, but many times, again, we just don't do a very good job of it. We still come at it with kind of a dominant perspective. So to be careful of that within the church. I mean, the diversity of plants, etc. I like this one show on YouTube. It's called Escape to the Country. It's in Great Britain, and it's people looking for new properties, etc. It's just, to me, it's just kind of a relaxing show. I don't have to sit there and think a whole lot. Neat houses that they show, etc. But they also have other things where they'll delve into things. And this last week, they were at this huge garden at this one place. They talked about that there are 700 different types of roses. 700 different types. Now, people may say, who cares? Who cares? But that's remarkable. I mean, that is just remarkable. And they talk about some species of roses, again, have been around for thousands of years. In fact, he described them as he said people think, well, roses are always kind of temperamental, et cetera. And he says, no, they're survivors. And again, to offer such beauty, certainly in terms of animals, the uniqueness, I get to experience that a little bit by virtue of the fact that, my daughter works at a zoo. And so, you kind of get some of the behind the scenes views or stories, just how different animals are. I mean, the difference just between Asian elephants and African elephants. Most of the elephants within the United States are Asian. African elephants are larger, a little bit more temperamental. They're incredibly intelligent creatures. She said out of all of the creatures on the earth, she said, elephants would rank right up there she said, maybe even surpassing human beings. She'll talk about the fact that the elephants at times will play games with them as zookeepers to see how the zookeepers will react. Just fascinating as to what they do and what their capabilities are. There's all kinds of experiences. Now, once again, we can cut ourselves off and we can say, well, maybe again, I'm not even interested in doing that. And it doesn't mean we all have to be alike. There's some people who look at the museums in Chicago and say, I have absolutely no interest in going there. I could care less about the Museum of Science and Industry. Many people will say, and I certainly don't care about the Field Museum. Now, whether they want to take part of the aquarium or the planetarium or whatever, and there's a lot of other museums as well. But what do they have to offer? What do they have to share with us? And again, the uniqueness of it. The Field Museum, I've been a member there for a number of years. One of the things they do in the springtime is they invite members to come 2 nights. And it's after the museum closes. So they have you come at 5 o'clock. And what they do is they open up the behind the scenes. And it is astounding how big that place is. You can't describe the numbers of specimens of insects and animals and everything. I mean, these are things that have been collected for a long, long time. And I think it's only something like, 7 to 10% of what they have is on display or what people are able to see. The rest exists for research. But that's just a lot of stuff. And that's not to mention something like the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. But there are museums in all kinds of places. Last time I was in New Orleans, I was looking for something else to do, and they had a museum. Let me see if I can get the name of it right. It was something about in the South, Jewish people who lived in the South. And their experience was different than a lot of other parts of the country. It wasn't a huge museum, but it was really interesting for me. You find those things. I mentioned I drive a lot, and part of the reason I drive is because in the driving, when you fly over, you get to your destination quickly, but we miss a lot that's in between. And in driving, I always find you just see interesting stuff. All of a sudden there's a sign for something, and I have no problem pulling off and going to visit it. In the last few years, one of the things I've discovered is, I'm aware of state parks in this area, but state parks in other states, how pretty they are, how big they are, what they have to offer. Not even talking about the national parks and what exists there. Sometimes, again, we maybe get turned off a little bit by crowds. Go a different time of the year. I go a lot of places in terms of early spring. Might be a little more chilly, but it doesn't prohibit you from going around and seeing things. But there are no crowds. And that's just a different way, again, to experience something. One of the concerns all the time is what's the cost of doing things. We could do things relatively inexpensive, or again, we save up. We explore different possibilities. Sometimes I like to think about it. What is the cost of not doing those things? how narrow does our world become? My parents didn't have a lot of money. We didn't live in a big house at all. In fact, it was a house that was built about 1900. But I'm grateful to my parents because in growing up, we always went on vacations. And now, it may have been going out to stay with my uncle in Denver, and not having to pay for lodging, but we went. And I think back of the number of places that I saw then, and subsequently, have visited a number of times through the years. I've, been blessed to be able to, I've been to all 50 states, most of them numerous times. And when I say numerous, I think there was a 6-year stretch. I think I was down in North Carolina 18 times. And again, to wander around, to see what's available, what's offered, and incredible experiences. Never thought I would get to go to Alaska and see what that offers. Denali National Park. Denali, as far as the mountain, was formerly Mount McKinley. Only 30% of the people who ever go up there get to see the mountain because most of the time it's kind of socked in by low clouds, etc. Got to see it 4 times in 36 hours. Going into the park, you can only go in by tour bus. And we had this guide, and we saw the 4 big animals, but all of them with their young. And this guy had been a tour guide for 19 years. And he said, "You guys have hit the jackpot." He says, "I've been a guide for 19 years and I've never seen this." So those unique opportunities, you run into other people. Sometimes we think, well, I don't feel comfortable talking to other people. Well, you spend time with people, and finally a conversation happens. Up in Alaska, again, there was a young couple, and they had just previously been on a trip to Italy, and they had planned their own trip. And I said, well, that really sounds interesting. And they said, well, would you want me to send you our itinerary? Where we went, where we stayed. I said, would you please? Research things. We have the benefit of the internet, and there's a lot on there. And I would say that is part of the excitement of traveling and getting out, is to be able to do the research and anticipate what you're going to do. The way I kind of try to do life, is, the trips I've been on, I have the memories, I have pictures, etc. But then I'm in the process of planning, and then I'm looking forward with expectation to the next trip I'm going on. That does something for me. I like to live that way. I like to kind of know what's the next trip. I've already got 3 or 4 more trips in my head already as far as the next year and a half, 2 years. I just like to get out there and do things. And again, you all of a sudden have opportunities, taking people down to Cherokee, North Carolina, or Oklahoma, and by virtue of the relationships that I had with people, the people that I would take down, they had experiences that were much deeper as far as dealing with those communities than the regular tourist would have, because there was a trust level there, and so they opened things up to them. But again, to really realize, people do things differently, and we don't have to worry about always, kind of making a mistake or doing something stupid. I've generally come to accept that I do stupid things. Hopefully infrequently, but I do it. And again, and if you offend somebody, fine, apologize. As long as you're genuine, things will be okay. Uh, Learn how to travel. There's a big trick in that too. From experience, what works, what doesn't work. Sometimes you have people who travel a lot and they will tell you, these are the things you need. This is how to pack. Don't overpack. Travel light. Be prepared for things. I travel with, a couple of years ago, I made up this backpack for my kids and everything. It's kind of a emergency backpack. It's got everything in it. I mean, everything they would need in terms of injuries, in terms of shelter, in terms of water. I mean, you can get these, they're called straws, and you can stick that in any body of water, and it will take out 99.9% of the contaminants. You got to have water to live. They also got a 5-gallon bucket with all these, freeze-dried meals. They last for 40 years. And people go, are you nuts? Well, better to be prepared than not. And even when I travel, to have it in the trunk of the car, I don't think I would get in very many situations that I would feel like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to survive? I would be able to survive. And of course, I've told them, the biggest resource that they have is their brain. Think. Make adjustments. But don't let it prohibit you from going out into the world. Like I said, what do we have here? To learn about people is to learn about ourselves. And some people say, again, in terms of history, I could care less about history. I have enough trouble dealing with today. But it's fascinating because we see, again, in terms of people who've lived in the past, they weren't stupid people, not by any stretch of the imagination. We still can't figure out how they built the pyramids. We still can't figure out, in terms of Central and South America, how those cultures, Inca, Mayan, etc., how they built the things they built. They didn't have modern tools. The joining of stones is so tight, you can't even put a piece of paper in there. How did they do those things? Again, just what can we learn? What can we appreciate? What can we celebrate? Like I said, it's a tough venture out there, but God goes with us. And it is an exciting universe because it is God's universe. And so to explore, others will accompany us if we're afraid to go by ourselves. I travel a lot by myself, but again, I'm kind of used to that. Many people, that's not their thing. But I don't have a problem in terms of finding a place to stay, stopping, getting gas, where am I going to eat. I like to find new places to eat just because I like to eat. And believe me, there are incredible places to eat. Some of them just very different. You want a different experience. I was in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and I thought, well, I want to go into town, and I want to eat like at a local diner because they probably have good food. But I just want to experience that. So I go to this diner, and I'm sitting there, and I order, but I notice that there are speakers up on the wall. And I wonder, what are speakers on the wall? It's not a very big diner. It's not like some chain restaurant or anything like that. And I thought, well, maybe they have a a congregation that worships here on Sunday morning. Well, then I see some guy going up to like this bureau with drawers in it and stuff like that, and he's getting a microphone out. And then I see people, they're passing around like these binders with CDs in them. It was karaoke night. You'd have never thought. And most of them were older. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is worth the price of a meal. To just sit there. And they were very kind. You can go places once again, and I won't mislead you. There are people who can make you feel like an outsider. When I lived down in Georgia, you hear the term Yankee, and you think, well, the Civil War's been over for a while. Not for some of them. Not for some of them. And, it's just those things that you get involved in. But again, people very, very kind. Last year I was near Gatlinburg, Tennessee, staying and had gone out to eat. And I went to, the place where everyone goes after they go to eat, Tractor Supply. Oh, how glorious is that? I mean, it's just a unique store. It has different types of things. I thought, okay, I'll just walk around. Storm was coming in. I walk out of Tractor Supply, and there's a guy over here, and there's a table, and he's got stuff on it, and he's selling things. Now, two people were talking to him, etc. But then there was another guy, and this other guy was with the guy who was selling stuff. But the other guy, he has tattoos everywhere. I mean, his face, his neck, sleeves. Now, where I grew up, I would not necessarily associate with someone like that. Just because, again, unusual, different, maybe a certain fear. What's that person like, etc. And he kind of turned and he said hi to me. And I said, hi, how's it going? And he said, yeah. He says, looks like a storm's moving and whatever. And I said, yeah. I said, but, great evening. And he says, oh, yeah. And we just started to talk. And he was from L.A., and I would say by virtue of the tattoos, either gang or prison. But he was extremely friendly. And I mentioned something about, where I was from, and he said, oh, my mom grew up in Chicago, and so we're talking and everything. I mean, he was a Christian, and that was why he was there. He and this other guy were part of like a halfway ministry. People who are homeless, people maybe who get out of rehab, or people who come out of prison, and to make that transition into society and to help them along. And he himself was a tattoo artist, but he said, "Oh my gosh," he says, "I just love it here." He said, with this, Appalachian Mountains and the climate and everything else, and he says, and the people are just so friendly. And that was just a chance encounter. And that's what the world offers us. And it's not only us talking to people, but we will probably find out that maybe some of our experiences are interesting to them. And it allows for this exchange. It may not be very long, but it's something you take with you, and you appreciate it, and you even say, maybe I was changed by that. That affected me, or that caused me to think about life or people in a different way. And that's beneficial. That's a blessing from God. I said, traveling by ourselves is one thing. Maybe there's somebody who wants to accompany us. My daughter, she's single. She'll be 44 the end of this month. Mandy has been to Australia. She's been to Africa. She has kind of an adventuresome spirit. When she was going to Africa, she proudly tells me that she went to AA that day and got her international driver's license. You got your international driver's license. Almost like, what prompted you to do that, other than recognizing that in South Africa they drive on the other side of the road? And she figured they'd be renting a car, so she needed a driver's license. So she just went and got one. Thought nothing of it. A lot of the rest of us would probably be more apprehensive. Oh my gosh, do they have rules of the road for driving on the other side? Well, I would imagine they're probably the same rules of the road we have. It's just flipped. That's all. She has traveled. She went to Australia with her housemates in college, 5 of them. Got the plane tickets. Went over there. She went scuba diving on the Great Barrier Reef. She had never scuba dived before. A few quick lessons, ready to go. She was riding horses on the beach. Pictures of her on the back of a horse, in the ocean, and the ocean comes up to here on them. Just these incredible experiences. Of course, Africa was much different. Things that she got to do, the things that she saw, things that many people, again, don't get to see, rare occurrences, whether it's a pack of wild dogs that even the guides were excited about, whether it was a herd of male elephants that they've been kicked out of their own herds as they get to adolescence, and every once in a while they bond together, and all of a sudden she's on this boat on the river, and this herd of elephants are coming, and they cross the river right in front of her and get out on the other side. Couldn't get out of her room one day at a hotel because a hippopotamus was right outside the door munching on grass. And you wait till the hippo's done. She went to Victoria Falls. That experience, I questioned whether she was my child. The water was lower. They have a place called the Devil's Pool. And it's this incline, and then there's this pool of water. And you can go online and you can see it. But there's a thin edge or ledge of rock, and over that is the falls. And so water's rushing down. And she said they had to go down this incline, and the guy is telling her, well, you got to be careful. If you go too far to the left, you go too far to the right, you're over the falls. You got to hit it just right. She said it took me 20 minutes to build up the courage to go. And she said, I finally did. She said, I have never felt adrenaline like that. And so she did it, and they get the pictures, etc. And she said, I would never do it again. But I did it once. And of course, then she's showing me, well, okay, she's up in a helicopter, and she's taking, well, there's the Devil's Pool and the helicopter. And I said, well, how did you get to that spot in the river? She says, well, we swam across the river. I said, you swam across the river. That's the river with the current that goes over the falls. What are you doing? And she said, well, they have a cable there, that if you, hook your arm over. Sometimes I just kind of go, and I don't know everything. Probably some stories she's preserving me from knowing. But again, just different types of experiences and to check things out and what's available to us. And it doesn't mean you have to go to Africa. It doesn't mean you have to go to Australia. I went to Guatemala on a mission trip. Again, very different culture, setting, etc. But locally, people many times don't realize what exists just around us. Certainly if you go like statewide, et cetera. But I've often said we were in Williamsburg one time with I was with my son, and we're sitting behind the governor's palace. Beautiful place, reconstructed so it would be like you were living in the 1700s. And a beautiful spring day, and we're sitting behind the governor's palace, and I said, "Okay, you ready to go?" And he looked at me, he says, "Why do we live in Northwest Indiana?" And there are so many unique places. But on the other hand, I kind of view this is kind of centrally located. If you would take a radius 6 hour drive, 6 hours driving isn't much. But 6 hours of driving, it's incredible how many places exist, how many different types of cities, or again, state parks, national parks, all kinds of things. Day trips. And again, if you want to throw in national trips and go different places and drive different places, or international, fine. But it's out there for us. Again, God's creation, we are God's people, God goes with us, and we're invited to have that broader perspective. It can bring a lot of joy to life. And, my personal feeling is, the closer I get to my eternal rest, to be able to look back and say, I lived life. I've always said I don't have any regrets. I have done more than most people who have ever lived on the face of this earth. I'm not saying that pridefully. Again, I've been blessed, and it's been a pretty good ride. So, questions, comments? We are rocketing towards the close of confirmation. I know that was just, I wish there was more. I know that. This is the final project. It has such a sense of termination about it, doesn't it? If you are planning on affirming your baptism, confirming your faith, what are you guys doing?
I'm not confirmed. That is the goal.
Okay. Now, were you baptized?
Yeah.
Okay. And well, take this. It's up to you what you want to do. Did you want?
Confirmed, baptized, everything.
The seal of approval has been on you. Oh my gosh. Again, this is for this is not a test. This is not for the purpose of, you having to answer things right. This is for the purpose of having a conversation and allowing you guys and Pastor Dave to be able to sit down and just talk about where life is for you at this point. And again, you don't have to be a certain place. You're in the process of growing and developing just as we are. That will take place until the day you die. And this is part of the journey of faith. It's not a graduation from faith or from church. We have gotten that wrong in the past. My confirmation class, I don't know, maybe there was 14 of us, 15 of us or something like that. I think probably the next week after we confirmed our faith, I don't know if the rest of them showed up for worship. And that's common. That's common. Again, when I was in Minnesota, and the classes were 60 to 80. And I'm talking 60 to 80 7th graders, 60 to 80 8th graders, 60 to 80 9th graders. The attrition was horrible, which just means they're not really getting it. So fill it out, conversation. Again, as I said last week, as to confirming your faith, no one makes that decision but you. No one. We can give you feedback as to where we see you in your faith journey. That's just information for you. But in the end, if you say, I'm ready to, again, make those promises that were made for me in my baptism as an infant, if that was what happened then. I'm ready to do that for myself now, and I'm ready to take responsibility for my faith. Then it happens. Just that simple. So, shall we have a moment of silence? How about we pray before we go? Dear Lord, we come to you tonight. We thank you for this day of life you've given us. It's contained a lot of different things. We've reacted and responded in a variety of different ways. But we're thrilled that you are our God. We appreciate your love. We appreciate your involvement in our lives, the way you sustain us. Be with us for the rest of this evening. Help us to have a restful night. Thank you for this world that you have created, that you've gifted to us. May we fully embrace it as much as we can and learn and be thrilled and to just take that with us on our years of life, however many they may be. Be with all the people in this world who struggle with life. Make us sensitive to the needs of others and use us to meet their needs in whatever way possible. So thank you once again. Help us to have a good night. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.